My mother-in-law and her group seemed to have arrived at the next service area and called me. "Sorry for leaving you behind." "We didn't mean it." "It's okay, I caught a taxi, so I'm heading straight to the hotel." "Huh? You're coming to the hotel? You should stop that." "You could have just slept outside." My mother-in-law taunted me as much as she could. I could also hear the obnoxious laughter of my sister-in-law, who was probably next to her. "Oh my God, that's hilarious." They were most likely making the call with just the two of them. After hanging up on my mother-in-law, I received a call from my husband. "My name is Mandy. I'm a 32-year-old housewife. Currently, I live with my husband Aiden and our 8-year-old son Miles. Our relationship as a couple is good, and our son is growing up to be a very good kid. But there's one problem. That's the existence of my mother-in-law. My mother-in-law picks on me for anything and everything. Before my child was born, she would annoyingly ask, 'Is there still no grandchild?' Once he was born, she would say things like, 'Poor child, having a stupid mother,' or 'You should just send your son, my grandson, here and live on your own.' She would casually throw such outrageous words at me. When I visited my in-laws, she would force me to do housework and cooking, and of course, find fault with everything I did. But the cunning thing about my mother-in-law is that she only bullies me when we are alone. In front of my husband, father-in-law, and son, she would treat me normally. As a result, my husband and the others didn't know that I was being bullied. I couldn't discuss it with my husband because of my mother-in-law. She would undoubtedly put on a show of crying about being falsely accused and insist on her innocence. So I tried my best to avoid going to my in-laws' house. But things changed after my son was born. Although not too far from our house, it still took about 40 minutes to drive to my in-laws. Driving alone while taking care of our son would be difficult for my husband. If I didn't go with them, my mother-in-law would constantly ask, "Why isn't Mandy coming? Is she having an affair?" She would say this in front of the child, and if left unchecked, she might start making things up. So I had no choice but to go to my in-laws' house to stop her. And so today, we were called to visit my in-laws again. My mother-in-law continued her bullying, stealing moments when no one was looking. But now, another problem has arisen. That is the existence of my sister-in-law. My sister-in-law moved back in with her parents about 3 months ago. Apparently, her workplace downsized and she lost her job. So she had to terminate her apartment lease and now lives with her parents while looking for a new job. My sister-in-law is just like my mother-in-law and joins in on bullying me. When these two are together, black becomes white and white becomes black. In other words, common sense doesn't apply. Amidst all this, my sister-in-law suggested that everyone should go on a trip during the upcoming Golden Week. My mother-in-law is overly enthusiastic and agrees with the idea. I had an intuition that something would definitely happen, so I objected, trying to find a way to avoid the trip. During Golden Week, Aiden will be tired from a business trip. I don't think it's a good idea, but my sister-in-law and the others wouldn't budge. "Well, then let's just go somewhere nearby. We have lots of brochures." "Exactly, if we're tired. We can just soak in a hot spring." "But isn't driving the car tiring?" "It's fine. Mom and I will take care of the driving." "Well, but..." "Miles, you want to go to an amusement park, don't you?" "Amusement park? I want to go." "See, Miles wants to go on the trip." "Is that so?" My husband and father-in-law didn't object, so I had no choice but to give in. Later, while I was washing dishes in the kitchen, my mother-in-law and sister-in-law approached me. "Mandy, what was that all about earlier?" "You're really terrible. Always trying to dampen the mood of a family trip." I couldn't help but blurt out my true feelings. "Well, I can't trust you two who are always picking on me to suddenly suggest going on a family trip without any ulterior motives." Mother-in-law and sister-in-law snickered at me. "Oh my, what a horrible accusation. Mandy, aren't you just overly paranoid?" "No, just annoyed," I said. "In that case, I'll decline. and go back to my parents' home, but they wouldn't let me off the hook. What? Are you planning to leave my young nephew's care to us? That's unbelievable. You're a failure as a mother. Do you know what will happen if you do that? Have you forgotten that I have the power to make sure your brother never gets promoted? This is why I can't confront my sister-in-law and mother-in-law head-on. Apparently, my sister-in-law is dating an executive at my brother's company. That's why she threatens to report me to her boyfriend, who is my brother's boss, and to make sure my brother never gets promoted if I upset her. I don't want my brother's life to be ruined because of me. Fine, I'll go on the trip. They both grinned as I gave in. How rotten can their personalities be? And finally, the day of the trip arrived. The plan was to visit an amusement park along the way and end at a luxurious hot spring inn. Well, I suppose the amusement park was just bait to lure my son in. The drive started with my father-in-law at the wheel. I wanted to point out that my sister-in-law was supposed to drive, but I let it go. In front of my father-in-law, my mother-in-law and sister-in-law don't bully me. So for now, it was peaceful. However, trouble soon arose. It happened about 1 hour into the drive. My sister-in-law and mother-in-law said that they were thirsty, so we stopped at a deserted parking area to buy drinks. Everyone got out of the car to use the restroom as well. I can't carry everyone's drinks by myself, so help me out. Reluctantly, I followed her to the vending machine. So I'll read out the drinks I noted earlier, and you just keep buying them. As she gave me instructions while looking at her phone, I pressed the buttons as she said. All right, carry all those drinks back, okay? She said and hurried back to the car. I was taken aback, and my reaction was a bit delayed. I rushed to pick up the many drinks, but there were just too many. I walked slowly towards the parking lot, trying not to drop them. Suddenly, the car started moving without me getting in. My mother-in-law was in the driver's seat. I'd been had. By the time I realized it, it was too late. I was left behind in the dim, deserted parking area. Later, I heard that my mother-in-law and sister-in-law had put on a fake show. The women's restroom was somehow out of order. My stomach hurts, too. That's terrible. Let's head to the next service area right away. Even though my husband noticed I wasn't in the car and warned my father-in-law, Mandy can just call a taxi. We have an emergency here. He didn't listen. Later, they arrived at the next service area and called me. Sorry for leaving you behind. We didn't mean any harm. It's fine. I caught a taxi, so I'll head straight to the hotel. What? You're coming to the hotel? Stop it. You should just sleep outdoors. My mother-in-law continued to provoke me. I could hear my sister-in-law's filthy laughter. Oh my gosh, that's hilarious. They were probably both on the phone together at that moment. After hanging up with my mother-in-law, my husband called me. He was with our son and father-in-law, buying soft-serve ice cream. After checking my situation, my husband made a surprising statement. We're going to the amusement park, so when you get to the hotel first, change their room to just one for Dad. What? Actually, Miles told me a while ago that you were being bullied by Grandma and Aunt. I reported it to Dad, and we decided to punish them if they did anything again. So that's what happened. I'm really sorry for not noticing sooner. No, it's okay. After hanging up the phone, I arrived at the inn, first as my husband instructed, and asked the inn to make my father-in-law's room a single room, since the two of them couldn't come. A little while later, my father-in-law and the others who had come via the amusement park arrived at the inn. Where are my mother-in-law and sister-in-law? As I said that, my husband grinned. We left them at the amusement park. What? According to my husband, he first guided the two of them to the famous haunted house in the amusement park. Then my husband, our son, and my in-laws and sister-in-law split into separate groups, and my father-in-law ran ahead, leaving my mother-in-law and sister-in-law behind, and later joined up with my husband and our son. It seems that they got in the car and headed to the inn before my mother-in-law and sister-in-law came out of the haunted house. During that time, my husband and father-in-law ignored several calls from my mother-in-law and sister-in-law. Then, we enjoyed the hot springs at the inn. Without my mother-in-law and sister-in-law, we were able to spend a very quiet and peaceful time. And then it was time for dinner, as expected from a high-class inn. Very luxurious dishes were served. At that moment, we could hear a commotion from the entrance. Judging from the shrill voices, it must have been my mother-in-law and sister-in-law. One of the inn staff came up to us looking uncomfortable and said, "There are people claiming to be with you." But my father-in-law firmly stated, "There's a situation, so please kick them out. You can even call the police if necessary." It seems that the inn staff had no choice but to throw my mother-in-law and sister-in-law out. They tried to rent another room at the inn, but all rooms were fully booked due to the holiday season. All nearby hotels and inns were also booked, so they had no choice but to stay at a rundown, nearly out of business inn. The tatami mats were filthy. The sliding doors wouldn't close properly, and there was even a huge spider in the corner of the ceiling. They could hear creaking noises at night, and both of them couldn't sleep at all. My mother-in-law and sister-in-law, who thought they had outsmarted me, ended up getting even worse treatment than themselves. It really serves them right. We were able to enjoy the delicious dishes in a peaceful atmosphere without any intrusions from the family. After returning from the trip, my father-in-law presented my mother-in-law with divorce papers and kicked my sister-in-law out of the house. Enraged, my mother-in-law and sister-in-law came to our house during the day when my husband was not there. I didn't want to let them into the house, so I opened the door with the chain still on. With a demonic expression, my sister-in-law threatened me, saying, "Give us this house. If you don't, I'll ruin your brother's life." But their threats no longer worked on me, because I now knew the whole truth. "So I heard that Mr. Smith, my brother's boss, isn't actually dating you, is he?" "What?" My brother asked him directly at a company drinking party. Apparently, they just went out for dinner a few times, but they're not in that kind of relationship. Moreover, they never even met alone. There were always other people with them. Well, and you said you were let go due to downsizing in your department, but in reality, you were fired for making a costly mistake at work. How did you find that out?" "My brother heard it from his boss, who you've been claiming is your boyfriend." "So that's what happened." "No, it's just that... Anyway, my husband has decided to cut ties with you two, so please don't ever come here again. He said I can call the police if you keep hanging around. So I'll report you right away if you don't leave." When I mentioned the police, my mother-in-law and sister-in-law quickly left the scene. I don't know what happened to them afterward, but it's unlikely that the two jobless women can lead a decent life, so they're probably forced to live in poverty. Well, it's none of my business anymore, so I don't really care. On the other hand, we can now visit my husband's parents' house with a peaceful mind since my mother-in-law and sister-in-law are gone. My father-in-law seems happy to see his grandchild and enjoys playing with him. Since my father-in-law is getting older, my husband and I have been discussing whether we should move in together or move closer to them. Either way, I want to live a happy life with my family, filled with love, support, and understanding. Thank you for watching until the end. If you liked it, please subscribe to the channel. See you in the next video.